Welcome to another week of Cool Tools Show and Tell. We have a fantastic guest this week. I'm really looking forward to this. Our guest is Jane McGonigal. And Jane, tell us who you are.
Well, I'm a game designer and a futurist. My job title is the Director of Game Research and Development at the Institute for the Future in Palo Alto. And the way I like to explain what I do is I try to create games that help people find a way to face uncertain futures with a little more hope and creativity, whether we're thinking about climate migration, the next pandemic, or what kind of transformative policies would help us solve issues like economic inequality or racial injustice. And I try to make it fun and imaginative so that we can tackle serious challenges, but playing at the same time.
Yeah, and you're a fantastic teacher, and you released a book, which we'll get to, telling people about how they could do a better job about anticipating the future. I have to credit you with introducing me to Werewolf Game, which is now the number one popular game in our family for family reunions.
Amazing. Well, we will have to have a separate conversation where I can give you my secret pro tips to really, especially for when you are the werewolf. I have a list of master strategies. Yeah.
I'm a really bad liar. So Jane, what's the tool that you have for us? What's one of your favorite tools?
Well, this has been the tool that has really changed my just sort of everyday life the most in the last 2 years. So this is it's a respiratory trainer. So this one is called the Breather. There are lots of different versions. They've been making them since about the 80s. And you put it in your mouth, kind of like a pipe, like you're going to smoke a pipe, and you breathe in. But the way the tool is designed is that it actually sucks air in the opposite direction as you breathe in. So it's kind of like a resistance band or like barbells for your diaphragm and for all of the breathing muscles in your throat and your chest.
Right.
So they invented it, in the 80s to help people with lung disease or recovering from severe respiratory infections. They started doing clinical trials on these devices and found out it's really good for increasing your exercise stamina. It lowers blood pressure. If you are doing a lot of public speaking, which is the reason why I use it. And, if you're talking on stage for an hour, you actually need a pretty serious lung capacity and endurance in breathing. And I also, I picked it up during the pandemic. Like many people, I think I had a lot of anxiety, especially early on. And I found that I was doing this like involuntary breath holding, which can be like an adaptive response to stress or shock, where you just stop breathing. And so I started looking for techniques or tools that could help me sort of get back into that full belly, lower diaphragm breathing. Do you want to see me use it?
Well, so I want to describe it. It's sort of like maybe like a baby's rattle, kind of a plastic rattle size, or like a big, pipe for pop. Ash pipe or something. It's kind of bulbous, but it's about the size. It's a little smaller than your hand. And how often would you be doing it? Like once a day for a particular doing some reps, or are you kind of like thinking whenever you think of it, you kind of use it in practice?
Yeah, it's totally like a weight workout routine. So you start out by doing 10 reps in the morning and 10 reps in the evening. And it's interesting. It's actually, you can see these like like on the side. They actually increase the resistance. So when you first start using it, you're at a level 1, and you can change. So you do for inhalation, it gives you resistance. And then for exhalation, and you can kind of set them separately. So if you really want to work on the inspiratory, capacity, then you can set that higher. But I'm like a science geek. I always like to see if the stuff I'm trying has any evidence. So just before this conversation, I was going into Google Scholar and Google News to see have they done any recent, scientific papers. And they do say 5 minutes a day is as effective as they've trialed more
Right.
extensive use. And the latest clinical trial found 5 minutes a day was sufficient to get benefits. So.
And have you noticed in your own that your dial is moving up, and so you now have at least more ability to overcome that resistance?
Yeah. So I'm again, as a gamer and a number geek, I was tracking all of my data. And when I started, my inhalation, like my inspiratory capacity, was less than a woman my height normally is. And now, as of this week, I'm at 170% predicted capacity for a woman my height. So I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to like sing on stage. I could do opera now. I feel like I've really. But
has it actually given you at least more confidence when you're speaking publicly?
Mm-hmm. Yes, more confidence. I mean, it really it just feels it's like a stamina. I'm also a runner, and there's a difference when you start running and training. You can go from feeling like you're putting in an effort to just having sort of effortless for miles. And I do find that sort of effortless quality has come back. And I'm sure it was interesting. A lot of speech therapists, ENTs have said during the pandemic, people were like stress holding in their throats, in their vocal cords. And I feel like there's I'm sure there's something in there, like the psychological connections to breathing. I've really been working out.
Well, let's see you demo one breath or
yeah. Cycle. And I don't know if it'll sound weird in the microphone. You may have to
I hope it sounds weird. So you were holding it for a long time, and when you're holding it, that's part of the exercise, is not just to blow, but to hold that.
Yeah. So it's not that you're holding the breath at the top. It's you're sort of elongating. So, and it's interesting. You don't really know until you try the sensation. It's actually takes you longer to take a deep breath because you're working against the device sucking the air out the other way. So whereas normally you might be able to fill your lungs in, a couple seconds, it takes longer to draw in all that air because you're working against the resistance. So it sort of naturally elongates your inhalation and exhalation.
Okay, that's cool. So what is the name of that again, please?
This one's called the Breather. And I got it because it just had a lot of good, reviews on Amazon, and it's not expensive at all. It was like $49. But there's lots of manufacturers that make these. This one's cool because it comes with an app, and you can sort of log your training, and so that's for me. That's
but it's not like transferring the data. It's not like recording it automatically. It's just manually you.
Well, you can start a program, so you can tell it how many reps you want to do, and then it'll lead you through that, and then it'll log that you did it. Yeah, so it's a little better than manually. Yeah.
Right. Okay, fantastic. Well, great. That's one we didn't know about, so thank you. What's another favorite of your tools?
So this one, I thought I'd share something fun. That if the Breather helps you breathe, this one can take your breath away. This is a toy I got for my family that I thought would be just for my kids, and I wind up using it myself a lot. So if I lower my and I'm totally going to get on this and demonstrate it too, but you can kind of see in the background, that is the Ganji carousel. So Ganji, I learned about. This is a toy manufacturer. It's based, I think it's German, and they make really sturdy tools for play that encourage kids to move their bodies and use their imagination. And this is their carousel, and it's at an angle, the seat. So you sit on it, but it's at an angle so that you can actually propel yourself spinning by using your core muscles, your abdominal muscles. And you kind of tuck your knees in, and it's supposedly for kids, but every adult who has come into my house since we got it has hopped on it and tried to use it. You go faster if you're like, I have 7-year-old daughters. Yeah. They go a little faster than we do. But it's really interesting. You know, I like it because there's a form of play. If you think about like the different kinds of play, like, you know, serious games, and then there's like imaginative play. There's a form of play that it's like play that induces vertigo. Kids, you know, have merry-go-rounds and, you know, we'll play at, you know, great heights and slides and things that kind of activate our nervous system, get us excited, but also we have to in a way, like control our response to really exciting stimulus. And like grown-ups, there's not really a lot of ways in normal life that we get that. In game studies, it's called ILLINX. So,
it's called what?
ILLINX.
ILLINX.
ILLYNX. It's like it's like philosophers and psychologists of play. This is Roger Caillois, who invented these sort of 4 forms of play. And he said, when we grow up, we stop participating in this vertigo inducing. And he was like, maybe it'd be good for grown-ups to kind of, you know, shock. It's like a visceral shock to your body. It kind of wakes you up, and you're, you know,
wow.
I mean, making yourself dizzy. And anyway, I like to sit on it when I'm just, it's like the opposite of meditation. Like if you want to wake yourself up.
I wonder if you could meditate and then go on to here, kind of like going from a sauna into an ice bath.
Yes, there you go. It would be like, it's literally that kind of, that shock to the system going between.
Meditate for 20 minutes and then spin. Literally spin.
Would you like to see it in action?
Yes. Of
and by the way, am I like the guest on this show who's most willing to potentially embarrass themselves? You've got me like sucking on this device and spinning. I definitely, okay. I feel like,
let's show it.
Okay, here we go. All right, here we go.
Oh, wow.
And I'm busy.
Very good. Would a large person be able to handle that? Can you elevate?
My husband is 6'3" and he does use it. So
okay. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like you're kind of getting pretty compact to kind of slow down, so
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's easier for kids. So, I will not give a guarantee. The website, when you order, it does say it's for kids. So, you know,
right.
But I enjoy subjecting myself to it as well.
So we'll put a link into the show notes about that. And again, the name of it is
Ganji. So Gonge.
Ganji.
And it's their carousel.
Carousel. Okay. Yeah. Spinning. I get it. Okay. It's a carousel.
Yeah. Okay, it's like your own little private carousel. Yeah.
Those are 2, which I've never heard anything about before. So that's great. I always love to have new ones. What's another tool, Jane?
So this one you might have heard of, but I had never tried it until recently. So this is an app. It's made by the Cornell Lab, which is a famous bird lab at Cornell University. So I'll just hold it up. It's called Merlin.
Right.
And this is a super cool app that lets you be a citizen scientist and report bird sightings, but also to kind of educate yourself or inform yourself about birds. And it's interesting. You know, I know a lot of people during the lockdown got really into bird watching. It was just something you could do, but I don't think I have the patience for bird watching, you know, like looking through binoculars, like trying to catch a glimpse. I always got frustrated and didn't want to do it. And then I found this app, which allows you to, instead of bird watch, you bird listen. And if you hear a bird, you don't have to see it, but if you hear it, you just hold up your phone and it's a sound ID. So you can see there's like a little button for sound ID. And then you just hit the record button and it will listen. And it records it, and then it searches its database using your location for birds that are native to your location. It matches the sound, and Oh, it's so fun. Now I can finally, for the first time in my life, I can hear a bird call and I can say, oh, that's a mourning dove, or that's a common raven. And it just changed my experience of walking around the world, where it's like hearing an old friend. And I don't know. I never could be a bird watcher, but I am learning so much from this app, and my kids love it. Wherever we go somewhere new, they ask like, Mom, can we do a sound ID? Maybe because it records every time you hear a bird for the first time. It counts as a lifer, as like it's in the bird watching tradition. And so they're obsessed with, where it's just like playing Pokemon Go.
Right. Collecting them. Collect. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that is a lot of the driving. I use this app too. It's really fantastic. And it's actually right now, you probably can't hear, I can hear these birds faintly out the window, and it's good enough to actually record things that seem that you could barely hear. That's what has impressed me most, is that you don't need to have a bird right next to you to capture the sound. It will identify multiple birds if there's more than one bird singing at the same time, which is really good because sometimes there's more than one sound going on and you don't even know which one. It's interesting hanging around bird watchers for a long time is that most bird watchers first identify birds by their song first. If you're around these people, they're like, oh, hear this bird. They don't see them at all. They're not watching. They're doing what you're doing, is they're just identifying it by the song. That's sort of almost the first thing that they do.
It's the clue. And then you pull out the binoculars and start looking for it.
To verify. It's a verification. But in fact, they're actually identifying them usually by the sound first, if they can. And there's also something interesting about this app that you might find intriguing because of your knowledge of AI. The hack that they used to make the app work is they actually take the sound and turn it into a sonogram, a visual sonogram. And they use the AI to identify visually the pattern. It was sort of easier to do that rather than try to figure out the audio sequence. They actually, the sort of AI image perception was much better. So they turned it into a visual picture first and used the AI to identify that picture of the sound.
Well, that makes total sense now that you've explained it. And it's interesting. I have found that so helpful because you can replay the bird sounds, the recordings, and I'll go back and listen to them. And I look at the sonogram. Right. It teaches me to recognize the pattern. Like it's easier for me to recognize the
pattern of the sound pattern by seeing visually. Yes.
And so that once I've heard a bird, I'm like, let me look at this, the way it manifests visually, and then that helps me recognize it better when I hear it again. That's really cool.
You're right that it just kind of changes your relationship, and I think the advantages of having these kinds of apps help you learn this is that you, at least I don't feel dumb asking them the app again. Oh, I should remember that. I heard it last year or yesterday. But I've already forgotten. And so there is an app equivalent called iSeek for identifying plants and flowers, which is just the same thing. It's mind-boggling and it changes your life forever because wherever you go, you just hold your camera up and it tells you what that plant is. And so again, you can kind of go back and be the slow learner with no embarrassment because it doesn't care. And so I found that is transforms our walks when we do walks, is because we're really slowly kind of learning all the names. And there's something about learning a name that kind of is a little platform to help learn more about it. I find that if I don't know the name of it, it's harder for me to learn more about the thing or its biology. But having a little name is a little handle.
Yeah, it creates a space in your brain to put the facts.
Right. Or there's a little slot now where you can put the extra information.
Well, it's funny. I have often been a slow learner when it comes to identifying things in nature. My husband grew up in Mill Valley where he takes a hike and he just knows the name of everything. And I'm just I don't know any of this. So I can relate to that. But it's interesting. We went to a Marin County Parks event a few weeks ago as a family. It was a mushroom hike to identify mushrooms. And it was led by a park ranger who's getting his PhD in mycology. And he actually had the group use that app, the iSeek app, to identify a mushroom, because it turns out like his PhD is in a very specific type of mushroom. And he used this app to something he's a super expert on. So that made me feel like, if someone with a PhD is using this app to identify something he literally is getting a PhD in, that's totally great for me to use it too.
and I was surprised that the same app is pretty good with mushrooms as well. And mushrooms are just famously difficult to identify at beyond a certain level. I mean, there's families and there's basic easy ones, but if you get into it very far, you're looking at spores and things that are secondary and third level identification. However, for many people, I don't know, maybe I would say 40% of the mushrooms this app would identify, in at least to the family. So that's a second recommendation is iSeek, but Merlin is just fantastic for birds, and I highly recommend it. And I think it's still free, if I'm not mistaken.
It is, yeah.
I know, isn't that amazing?
It's super amazing.
Yeah. And, by the way, you need to load libraries in it. So if you're traveling somewhere else to a different continent or somewhere far away, you may need to, if you really want to use it, you may need to load the library because it takes up space on your phone.
Yes, exactly. I know my kids were so excited to use it the first time, and we kept having to load things. So it's true. It's like, give yourself a good 15 minutes before you're ready to start using it to get it all set up. And you need different accounts and things like that.
So, well, thank you. That's really fantastic. So Jane, let's talk about your special project and your book that has just come out, and
I'll hold it up.
I'm a big fan of it. There it is, Imaginable, which is, in my estimation, the best book I've seen on how to learn about anticipating the future. There are a lot of books that do that, but there's really none that really teach you how to do that. And I think that's what I would cast your book as. You may have a different opinion about what it is, but that's what I would say.
No, that's, first of all, thank you for those kind words. That is literally the nicest thing I could hope to hear, because you are like the original person who was able to think creatively and strategically about the future, especially here in Silicon Valley. I do think of it as essentially a handbook or guide. I think I'm one of the few people who really uses games systematically in the practice of future forecasting, games that are inspired by advances in computer games and video game genres. And I didn't want to be the only person who, could create these games or design playable scenarios. So I wanted to write a book that would teach people to do this in the same way that we saw an explosion of independent game design. And there's a whole indie game movement. I mean, I'm hoping anybody who reads this book will start designing their own scenarios and, hosting their own scenario clubs and playing around the kitchen table the way, you might play a board game or a card game. We can start playing with future. So that's exactly, I'm trying to teach people how to play their own, design and play their own future games.
When you are doing a workshop and trying to help people think and teaching them about scenarios, is there one or two tips that you could right now give people that you have found that really helps people transition from maybe what they normally would do to a better way of doing it? Is there a couple of things that you have found that helps people the most when they're trying to do this?
Well, as a game designer, you always play test your games with people to see, is it fun? Do they understand the rules? How long does it take them to understand, what the possibilities are in this game space? And I think we need that same kind of practice developing future scenarios. And one of the things that I always encourage people to do is, you essentially play test these ideas and really get a sense very early on. Do people understand what you're trying to share? I think we often underestimate the gap between just people walking around ordinary life, really thinking about what's going on right now, and all of this, the stuff we have in our mind when we think about the future, we practice futurist thinking. There's often a bigger gap. So really play testing early. Do ordinary people understand this? Do they have fun imagining it? So I think a lot of times, the early scenarios that I come up with, the first versions of them, maybe they're not quite fun enough to think about. It's like, whoa, it's too overwhelming, or I can't see what I would do in these situations. And so, I oftentimes will try to make a future, like, where's the fun in this future? Who made this future happen on purpose? Like, why, why, what are some of the benefits so trying to offset, because I often look at future risks and growing threats and that sort of thing. But I think that sort of play test mentality, see what people do with it. Can they clearly imagine it? Can they describe back to you what's new and different about the world? Really making it accessible and playable.
One thing I found, and I think you touch on in your book, in people thinking about the future, it's useful to do what the journalists call self-distancing, where you kind of trying to imagine not from your current self point of view, but either somebody else or yourself in the future. And that idea of like giving you permission to try to think about it from a different point of view can release you from some of your assumptions that you have. So it's like, well, pretend that you are a Martian arriving here, or that you are, I don't know, born in Africa, and you are going to do this. That self-distancing, separating that view from your current view, allows the person to release some of their assumptions that they would have difficulty doing otherwise. And another one is imagining that you are a future self looking at this is another way to do that.
Yes, it's interesting. Some of the games that I've developed have been for the World Bank, and they take them into developing areas. And we found that even just asking people to imagine themselves 10 years in the future, they were able to imagine themselves being more ambitious, more creative, more hopeful. And it actually became a practice for the World Bank to instead of saying, imagine yourself starting a social enterprise, like tackle all of these issues in your community today, they start by having the young people imagine themselves solving a problem 10 years from now, because then they give themselves a little more credit for actions they could possibly take. And it becomes a way to sort of, then you kind of bridge your way back. Well, here we are today. What do we feel ready to try today?
Yeah. And I think another technique, which I think you mentioned in the book too, is this idea of, again, a future self. But this future self is where the future has already happened. It's a given. There's no question about it. And the question is, well, how did we get there? You're kind of like, it's not like, well, what if? It's like, well, no, it happened. We have, I don't know, we have flying cars, or we have something. That's for sure. And so that for sure. So now write the story of how we got there. And that often kind of, again, unleashes people from the thing, well, that's impossible, we can't have it, here's all the things why it won't happen. No. It actually happened, and you have to tell the story of how it happened. And that is another way of kind of forcing people over the hurdle of the barrier of all the reasons why they think it can't happen.
Yes, exactly. And we have this game that we play 100 ways anything could be different in the future. And we brainstorm essentially 100 things that sound impossible.
Right.
And then each team picks one of these impossible futures. And their job is to go out and find the signals of change and the drivers of change that maybe could actually make this, ridiculous at first sounding scenario plausible. And they come back with, their story. Well, it sounds ridiculous that there's no minimum voting age anymore. Babies can vote in the future. Right. Okay. How did this happen? And it turns out that, even if you're literally imagining something that you are very confident will never, ever happen, just that skill of looking for the clues that challenge our assumptions about what can and cannot change, it's such a good practice. You start to see clues to surprising change everywhere.
Yeah. And your book is kind of full of these kinds of exercises, techniques, strategies of this. These are just a few of them, but I highly recommend it because the skills that we're talking about right now are kind of practiced by futurists and people to help other people think. But it really is a life skill, I think, for people in the modern world, and that is because our future is changing at such a rate that even within our own lifetime, we will experience significant change. And so we, as individuals, need to get better at this ourselves, just trying to prepare for things that are coming. And the terminology that I use is that, and I know that you agree with it, is you can't really predict things, but what we're after is to not be surprised by them. Mm-hmm. Right. It's exactly. Like, that's the thing. It's like, no, we can't predict that this is going to happen, but we want to be ready and prepared and not surprised by when they happen. So we're going to have to be not surprised by lots of things that won't happen. They'll never happen. But if they do, we're going to be kind of like, oh yeah, I can see that. And I'll be ready for it.
And if we can make it fun to prepare, right? As we play with these possibilities, then it's great. We're feeling more creative. We're feeling like an interesting person who knows lots of cool stuff. And then if we ever wake up in a world that is shocking the rest of society, we have thought about it a little bit, then maybe we can adapt a little faster, help others more effectively.
Yeah. And I think collectively, the step is in terms of not being surprise or prepared, is that we would actually have some things in place for what we would do if X happens. Mm-hmm. Like what's our program, what's our agenda, what's our policy that collectively that we would kind of agree that, I don't know if it will happen, but if it did, here's what we should probably do about it. And that would be where, at a society level, where we would go to if everybody is sort of doing this on a regular basis.
Yes. I love that, like a proper futurist, you're already scaling the potential long-term impact of just, people buying a book like Imaginable and teaching themselves. What's the biggest, best version? We can scale this up for the future. Yeah,
because, again, within my own lifetime, like, just taking the internet, for example, I was writing about it in the early 80s. And to me, it was evident, and to a lot of other people, that this was coming. And we were saying, get ready. It's going to come. It's going to change schools and how we do schooling and all these other things. And nobody prepared. Nobody was ready. We could have done so much more collectively to be ready for the gains and to be ready for the harms. And so it wasn't as if people should not have been surprised. Yeah. And we could have been, as a society, much better prepared. And so that's my hope, is that we learn to do it individually. I think learning to do it individually, as you're trying to help people, and you're also trying to help people who are professional too. But I think that's really a great first step in this transformation, where this becomes common.
Yes.
And the default, and taught in schools.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, it's like, and your gamification and making it play is important, because it is, or I should say, Michael Schrage wrote this book, Serious Play. I don't know if you remember it, but it's serious play. It's like, it's play, but play is very vital That playfulness is necessary. It's how you do this. So it's kind of like innovation. Innovation has to be playful in a certain sense. And so, yes, it's playful, but this play is serious.
Yes, absolutely. Not a paradox. When
No.
we play, even when we're playing our favorite traditional games, we do take it seriously, right? We pour all of our attention and effort and creativity and ingenuity. So, we can play seriously with the future.
Yeah. So I recommend Imaginable, for sale wherever books are sold, and it's well worth your time to read. And if you don't know anything about the futurist world, all the really good strategies and techniques, I think Jane have captured them there. So it's a great introduction if you want to do this, on a more serious manner. But thank you for a great book.
Oh, thank you. This has been a really fun conversation.
And thank you for the great tool tips as well.
Yes. We're all going to be spinning on carousels in the future.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jane. And until next week, we'll see you at the Cool Tools Show and Tell. So thank you. We're glad that you enjoyed this issue of the Cool Tools Show and Tell. Just want to remind you that we have some other coolish material on our YouTube channel here. Please subscribe, comment, like. In addition, this Cool Tools Show and Tell is also available in an Audible podcast form. You can subscribe to it wherever you subscribe to other podcasts if you just wanted to listen. And if you're listening, know that there is a visual version of this on our YouTube channel where we're actually showing the tools, and there's a little bit more of a visual component there. In addition, the same folks that put us, the Cool Tools website out, we also put out a free newsletter every week. It's very, very short. It's 1 page or less. We recommend 6 very brief items that are very succinct, easy to read. You can deal with it in a couple minutes. And every week we bring to you the 6 cool things that we have uncovered and want to share. And it's called Recommendo with 1 M, recommendo.com. You'll be able to find it there. It's free. Join 50,000 plus other subscribers every Sunday morning. You'll get it in your email box. And it's actually one of the most popular things that we produce. But we do produce other newsletters as well. One of them is called What's in Your Bag. We have one that goes out to tools and tips for your workshop. So you can get those at our website, and they are also free. And finally, I want to mention the fact that we do have a Patreon, and this podcast and this vidcast are supported by Patreon supporters. The minimum is $1 a month. And for that, you get an email to ask us anything. We will respond and answer your question if we're able to. There are other higher levels. You can all see those at our Patreon page. And all those links are below right here. So thank you again for being a fan. And we'll keep producing stuff if you enjoy it. Thanks. Thanks to this week's Patreons. They include Rachel Steele, Michael Lenardi, David Robson, Varo Patel, James Borsmer, Daniel Cochran, Edge Cetra, Melissa Feldman, and Jeremy. Thank you all.